set it there.
Cut! Ribbit!
And cut.
Cut!
Cut. Terrific.
Cut!
And cut.
Cut. Let's try it again.
And cut.
Cut! Check the gate.
Cut it! Cut!
Welcome to Cut, just another movie podcast. I'm Manny.
I'm Angie.
And we're two siblings that love movies. We're back. It's been months since you've heard from us. I believe the last podcast that we did was on the crazy Oscars. But now we're back, better than ever. We're going to do a review of a movie that's came out literally tonight. Right?
It's actually not even out. It comes out in 20 minutes.
20 minutes?
Or if you're in the theater, you probably saw it already.
You're probably watching it right now as we speak. But before we get into this review, I want to go over our YouTube channel because we do a simulcast. We do obviously an audio podcast. We also do a video podcast on YouTube. Search Cut Movie Pod and you should be able to find us. And again, like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff helps the algorithm and helps our stuff to be seen. So without further ado, let's get into the review. So what movie are we reviewing, Angie?
Much like last year when we reviewed Halloween Kills, the sequel to David Gordon Green's Halloween trilogy, tonight we're doing Halloween Ends, the last one,
Hopefully.
supposedly.
But yeah, we're doing Halloween Ends, and we were lucky enough to get tickets to go see it at Beyond Fest. If you've heard or seen our podcast, you know how much praise we have for Beyond Fest. It's an annual film festival in LA, and it's around spooky season, so October. And they usually do movies that are horror-esque, thriller-esque, but also like this year they did IMAX, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. They did Gravity in 3D.
They did Triple R.
Dunkirk, Triple R, yes. And so it's kind of like an eclectic kind of, mashup of movies. And this year is their 10-year anniversary. So that's awesome for Beyond Fest to have existed, especially through COVID and the pandemic. And it's always a lot of fun, and this screening was no different. Like last year, hosts come out and like they throw beach balls and like they have this cool, they show teasers of all the films that are in the lineup, and then they do like a mashup of just like crazy scenes from different movies and get the crowd going and introduce the film and all that. It was packed, theater was packed to the brim. Everyone's excited to see the conclusion of how Michael Myers' story may end or not, or, Laurie Strode, what's going to happen to her. And Angie, what did you think?
Well, I was just excited to see it because, like you said, seeing a movie with a Beyond Fest crowd, even if it's a bad movie, is always really fun because you get people participating and you get people cheering and you get freebies, like we got t-shirts. So that part of Beyond Fest I really like, and that's why I was really excited, especially for this one, because it was the end. Like, it's the last movie as far as we know. And I was excited to see it because, I'm a huge fan of the genre. I love seeing these movies, even if, they're good or they're bad or whatever. It's always just a really fun experience just being there, watching it with other people, especially for the first time because it was the world premiere. So I was excited to see it. Did I like it? I don't know. I liked it more than Halloween Kills for sure.
Okay.
Because Halloween Kills was just a disaster for me. Like, just like beginning to end was just, yeah. Well, except for the firefighter scene. That was cool. And I think with this one, I kind of just went into it with no expectations because I was like, if I set them too high, then I'm going to be upset. But then so I kind of just went in it being like, I'm just going to watch it and then whatever happens, happens. And I think they took a really huge risk with this one. And I don't think it worked. Like, I was talking about it yesterday and I was saying, I wish this movie would have been the second one in the trilogy and then still have there be another movie. Because it kind of felt like, I don't know, like incomplete a little bit, even though like the ending, you get like an ending. But everything leading up to it felt like it could have been the middle part of the trilogy.
Right.
And then just like tack on the ending to like another movie that would be the end one. So that, I don't think the risk worked in the ending of the trilogy. I think it would have worked better as like the middle of it.
we're being very cryptic right now because the first half of the pod is going to be spoiler free. So if you haven't watched it or plan to watch it, you can listen to that part, and then we'll give you an alert. Our trend is to do like a sound effect. I think like last time it was like celery cutting, so like stabby sounds. So I don't know what we're gonna do this time around, but we'll let you know when the spoiler part of the podcast begins. I had mixed feelings going into it because, like you, Halloween Kills, I didn't really enjoy. It felt like a mixed bag of things, and it felt like a bunch of ideas sort of marinating, but the execution wasn't really there. And then one of the things that you and I talked about is like how Laurie's daughter, played by
Judy
Greer, we had completely forgotten about that she like died in it.
Yeah.
And it's literally, and I rewatched Halloween Kills earlier today, kind of like a Cliff's Notes, just like to see what I would remembered of it. That's the last fucking scene in the movie. She goes up to Mike Myers to the top floor.
Yeah.
And she's kind of can feel like Mike Myers' presence and all that. And this is like after Michael Myers just kind of went AWOL on all the protesters or the people that are out to get him. Right?
Yeah.
This is after he kills everyone. And then her daughter's like downstairs, and like there's people downstairs. And she kind of looks out the window, and it's like one of the like jump scares is that he's like right behind her, and then just stabs her to death. And then it's just a shot of Michael Myers, and then it just says Halloween Kills, and then the
I don't
credits start
remember
rolling.
that at all.
I did not remember that at all. So it's like one of those things where it wasn't very memorable, and especially we talked about this earlier too. I really enjoyed Halloween 2018.
I did too.
I thought it was like a great restart. You know, if they were gonna negate all the other sequels and go from the 78 Halloween to like the 2018 one, I thought it was like really well done. And just the setup that Michael Myers was just like very ubiquitous, like scary character. I thought they did a really good job with that. And then with Halloween Kills, it was like, I get that he's trying to be that they, you know, there's a lot of exposition where Jamie Lee Curtis is like, he's like more than human, and like, you know, he can't be killed by conventional things and all these other things. But as we're going to find out in Halloween Ends, he kind of is human.
Yeah.
Because of how he ends up. That's the thing that's sort of like a mixed bag of like, so is he supposed to be paranormal? Is he human? Is he like both? Is it because Laurie had to like confront him at the end of Halloween Ends, and she's the one that dictates like his fate because of their connection? Even
before they have like their final showdown, like when we find Mike Myers in Halloween Ends, he's like, I mean, I'm not going to say anything, but he's just like a man, you know? And then like with like the way they kind of twisted the whole Mike Myers the shape thing, it was just kind of, I feel like OG fans of like Halloween and like Mike Myers are going to really hate what they did with like the whole thing I'll talk about later. Just because of how we find Mike Myers, and you're just like, this is Mike Myers.
So
like,
it's like a Luke Skywalker thing?
Yeah, except that was good. Like, yeah, and I was thinking of that kind of like midway.
The fanboys are going to be
because I was
outraged.
like, oh, people are going to hate this. And I was like, wait, am I liking this because people are going to hate it? But no, I didn't. I don't think it worked in the way that it worked with like The Last Jedi, you know?
And I think it's such a like dramatic shift too, where like I said, at the end of Halloween Kills, he's like kind of reborn and like shown to be a badass that like can't be destroyed.
Yeah.
And then in Halloween Ends, the first time that you see him, you're like,
that's
you
what I'm saying.
Like, he's living where?
Yeah.
And he's like
he's doing
with
what?
other people.
Yeah.
But they're not the people that you would expect. And there's a narrative to it. So maybe we should backtrack a little bit to like the beginning of the. Did you expect Halloween Ends to start the way that it did?
To their credit, that was so good. That's my favorite part of the movie. The opening was so, and it set the bar so high for me that I was just like, oh, this is going to be awesome. And then like, it just kind of fell flat and just like, You
And
know?
to me, that was the best kill of the whole movie. Like
Yeah.
within the first 5 minutes of
Yeah.
Halloween Ends, and that's the thing, if you're looking for the kills to be as dramatic as Halloween Kills in Halloween 2018, it doesn't even come close.
Yeah.
Like, especially rewatching Halloween Kills.
Mhm.
And I get it, it's in the title, so you gotta like amp it up. But I was really disappointed in the kills in Halloween Ends. I thought like, dude, this is it. You're
Yeah.
gonna go for it. And it was like, like
Yeah.
they were all right. But yeah, the beginning sequence that sets up the whole narrative
It's really good.
it's really good. And then it sort of just kind of like goes downhill from there. And you would think that it would be Michael Myers and Laurie the focus, but it kind of segues. And I think that's what you're talking about with like the risks that they took
Yeah.
that didn't really pay off. I thought the same thing too, where it had potential, but then it just sort of flatlines, and then you get caught up in another Star Wars reference where I'll say it later, but it just reminded me of a master and an apprentice. And
Yeah.
like, what's happening? Is there a transfer of energy or evil, in the movie? And then it just ends up kind of back in the same place, by the end of the movie. Did you feel like there was like lack of Laurie in the movie?
Well, no, I did. Well, especially because in Halloween Kills, she's barely even in that because she's in the
'Cause she's
hospital the whole
injured,
time.
yeah.
And so I thought this one was just, like you said, just going to be Laurie and Michael Myers. And so that weird kind of storyline that you end up having with Laurie's granddaughter, Allison, it kind of like, I don't know, it kind of like got in the way. And that's why I said, I was like, I feel like this should have been the second movie. That way in the third movie, it could have been all about Laurie and Mike Myers.
Right. That was the other thing too, is like the ending. So like crowd reaction, like we talked about Beyond Fest, how like usually like people will like give it up. Like the other movie that we're going to do a podcast on, people were like going nuts.
Do people were live? I laughed so much throughout that movie.
For moments. And
Yeah.
so if it's a genuinely good moment, like that crowd will give it up to you. I can't there was maybe 2 other moments throughout Hollywood Ends where people, but even then it was not like,
Well, it was definitely the beginning that people cheered the loudest for.
that was the big moment. But then after that, like there were moments I think where like towards the end where like it's like Laurie and Michael Myers
Yeah.
and shit happens and they were like, yeah, but it wasn't very enthusiastic. And the ending of the movie, it kind of just like, I felt like the room felt like that's it.
It was just like deflated. Everyone was just like,
yeah, it felt like the conclusion wasn't enough. And especially for like I thought the hardcores would at least like give it up, but it was like kind of more like,
yeah.
yay, it's done. And it was very kind of like a customary applause rather than like real enthusiasm.
I thought about this like a few times throughout the movie. I was like, this reminds me of Grease 2.
Oh yeah, with the
And
bike.
with like the bike and like the scenes with them on the bike. I was like, what?
It did remind me of Grease too, but then it also just reminded me of like 70s, 80s movies where like bike culture was really big.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's a character who, how do I say this? Maybe I'll get into it later. But
yeah.
So after you watch the beginning of the film, you realize that the story arc isn't really going to revolve primarily about, Laurie and Michael Myers. There's a new character that's kind of brought in, and he becomes the love interest of Laurie's granddaughter, Allison. And there's kind of like like I said, like 70s, 80s biker movies where like it's like the noob, the kind of the nerd and all this, and he has to like come to his own and whatever. And so that's when you talk about Grease 2. I mean, it reminded me of Sandy's cousin.
Totally.
Who's going after Michelle Pfeiffer.
Michael.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool writer. I really miss Judy Greer's character.
I did too. When I realized that she was actually dead, I was like, oh no.
Yeah. Not only because she's like a great actress, and it's a pretty good ensemble cast. Like everyone's casted really well and everyone performs really well. But after rewatching Halloween Kills, her character, I think, just sort of embodied a lot of like the mystery with Michael Myers and kind of tying the 70s with the modern time. She was like kind of the bridge. And even though like Laurie, because like we said, Laurie gets kind of pushed to the side in Halloween Kills because like she's injured, and obviously there's a bond with her and Officer Hawkins, played by Will Patton. And he's in Halloween Ends as well. But also he is like very minimal time, you know?
Yeah.
He's kind of like in the beginning, a little bit in the
He
middle.
just like
and then
randomly
the
shows
end.
up. Yeah. Her character, or I guess the way Judy Greer played Karen, was kind of like, felt like the only like real character out of all of them, because you have like Allison, who's kind of like, you know, the teenage girl in like the early 2000s slasher movie. And then you have Laurie, who's like the original final girl. And then even Will Patton's character is like the cop that's like in the, so everyone's kind of playing these like tropey horror characters, but I feel like Judy Greer's Karen was like the only, like I almost want to say kind of like the audience,
The
like
most
she felt like
grounded
the
one?
most grounded
Yeah.
one,
Yeah.
and I guess the most relatable out of all of them.
And she had to, like, she's the only one that's motherly, you
Yeah.
know, because she's like she's like doing double duty where she's like trying to, you know, raise her teenage daughter, and then is like dealing with like
Yeah.
her mother's trauma,
Yeah.
you know, from this like killer. And yeah, and then I remember that scene in Halloween Kills where she's like the only one that's like, that's not Michael Myers, with the other guy that escaped.
Yeah.
And she genuinely tries to help him, and then he ends up, you know, jumping off the building and all of that. So what do you think about the last quarter of the movie, the ending?
I mean, I guess like, I don't know. I don't, there was a way that I wanted it to end because it was the only way I felt like it should end if it's really ending. But the way that it actually ended leads me to believe that it's not ending, if that makes any sense. And I don't know. It was just kind of flat. Like the final scene, I was like, okay.
Yeah, there's obviously kind of a spoiler, but not really. But if you follow the series and like follow movies, like there's obviously a battle, like I said, with Laurie and Michael Myers. And then there's another scene that kind of takes it back to Halloween Kills. But then it sort of leaves me with like, how can he, if they are going to make more, how's that possible?
It's Michael Myers.
Like, there's like no
I know.
physical way that it's possible.
They could do.
But which leads me to that Star Wars thing of like, was there a transfer of power that happens?
Well, there's not, because, well, I'll say it later, but there's not.
I know, but it's not the first time that we've seen people die and then like come back.
That's true. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So my theory was that, and even like after seeing the Halloween 2018, because I think the last scene is they're in the back of the truck.
Yeah.
And
After
then
they've, like, I
Allison
think Laurie's
has,
been
like,
stabbed.
The knife.
Yeah.
And it's a shot of her holding it, and then it cuts. I thought Allison was going to
Yeah.
become the new Michael Myers. So yeah, the ending to me felt really flat. And like I said, the way that the crowd responded
Yeah.
kind of felt like I wasn't alone in that. And even if it does come back, it's going to have to be some weird...
There's going to be some weird, like, either retconning, or they're going to have to do some weird, like, witchcraft thing.
Yeah,
it's going to be like Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So it doesn't even have to do with Mike Myers.
Right.
And it's going to be some, some other thing.
So it's like the expanded universe. Like,
Yeah.
It's in the world, but it's just
Right.
completely different characters and completely different, bad guys. Okay, I think we tiptoed enough, and we're about to enter the spoiler part of the pod. So what sound should we do? What's the cue?
I would say you could do the Halloween, the sound when Mike Myers is near, but I don't know if that's copywritten.
What do you mean, like the
little piano keys.
Oh, that's definitely copyright. John Carpenter would come after us.
It's 2 seconds. Okay, I don't know. Do some more chopping sounds.
Okay, and here we go. Entering the spoiler part of the pod. Okay. So do you want to start?
Boy. Okay. Yeah. So I'm going to go back to them, or I guess like the difference between this and the first two Mike Myers movies and why I think Mike Myers fans aren't going to like it is that we hardly get any of Michael Myers in this movie.
Right.
Or, you know.
Because do you want to tell him where he's like been living?
Okay. He's been living in like a sewer. Like when we see him, he's in a sewer and like.
He's kind of a troll, like a literal
yeah, and there's
troll.
like a hobo that lives with him,
Right.
but like, and knows that he's there. And yeah, he's just kind of like lives in the sewer.
Yeah, he's like underground and like a recluse and doesn't seem like he's been killing
No.
anyone in like a year.
So that was weird to see. And then we get this new character, Corey Cunningham, who ends up being Allison's love interest. But in the beginning, that scene that we were talking about, that's really, really good. He's like a babysitter and accidentally ends up killing a kid.
The way that it's like set up is kind of brilliant because it plays on, and this is the thing that I did like about the new trilogy is how they play on the legend. And like I remember with Big John and Little John, how they're
so
scaring
good.
kids.
I love that.
With like, oh, like that's Michael Myers' house. Did you hear what happened? So it's a throwback to that where like he's babysitting this little bratty kid, and the little kid is the one that brings it up, right? About
Yeah,
Michael
he's like,
Myers.
you're the babysitter, and he only kills babysitters.
And what was his name?
Corey.
He kind of plays your typical like nerdy, like insecure adolescent, and so the little kid's really kind of like bullying him, you know, kind of like
he's being a brat.
Yeah. And then he goes into the kitchen and then he hears like like the kid like, oh, like something's happening to me. Come like check me out. And they go to the attic and like the little kid is playing a prank on him and he locks Cunningham in the attic and he's trying to break through. And right as the little kid's parents are coming home, he like breaks through and hits the door so hard. And the little kid is on the other side, and so he like hits the door so hard with his leg that like the little kid. Oh, they're in the
like
attic.
the third floor balcony.
Oh yeah, the third floor. He like flies off and just smashes on the ground, and that's when the car was like, "What the fuck?"
That was really good. That was
great.
really brilliant. I really wish that the rest of the movie had been that way because it was just disappointing to see where it went from there. And so after this, Corey becomes kind of like the black sheep of the town because he goes to court for this. He gets acquitted, you know, all this stuff. But there's still kind of like the story of Corey being the guy that killed the kid.
So he's in a way like the new Michael Myers.
Yeah, because he's ostracized and he's like a loner and, you know, yada, yada, whatever. But I feel like the thing that I found the least believable of this whole thing is the fact that he gets bullied by band kids.
Yes.
Like as band kids, like.
I wanted to turn to you in that scene and be like, is this a Gen Z thing? Are band kids now like
Are they
the baddies?
mean now?
Please comment in the comments.
Because the band kids were like the jocks would have been. Like they're like assholes.
Yeah. And like one of them still wearing their like marching band uniform.
Yeah.
And the main guy's like this like super asshole like in a Letterman's jacket. And Cunningham is working at a gas station. And they're like, hey, can you like, what do they say? Oh, to buy him beer.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what it
because he's
was.
older. Yeah, these band kids are bullying an older man,
Yeah.
basically.
And they're like, yeah, man, we got to go to the football game, like chop chop and all this. I'm like, this would never happen in real life.
No.
Again, unless something happened and like, please reach out if
No.
there's like anything.
I doubt it.
But yeah, that scene was ridiculous. And I wanted to turn over his fellow band kids and be like, what the hell is happening?
So Corey gets bullied and like, you know, he's ostracized. Everyone in the town thinks he killed this kid, even though he got off. And that kind of snowballs into him getting angry and building this anger. And then he ends up stumbling on Mike Myers. How does he?
The band kids in the overpass where Michael Myers.
They beat him up
They
and dump
beat
him.
him up, yeah, and they dump him on the thing, and he ends up like underground where there's like an old homeless man.
Yeah.
And then magically he stumbles onto Michael Myers, and then
Who doesn't kill him?
Here's the scene where it was total like borderline Star Wars to me, because like is it Michael Myers that grabs him by the neck? Yeah.
He's like
and
about to
then
kill him.
It's like there's
He,
like
like,
a
sees
flashback. He
his,
sees
like,
all the
yeah.
murders that Michael Myers has done. And like, so it's like he's transferring his evil to Cunningham.
But then also Mike Myers sees what happened to Corey.
right.
Like he like sees how he was like falsely accused and how he's angry and blah. And then he decides not to kill him.
So it's like a Ren and Kylo moment.
And then somehow Mike Myers is just like, okay, and like lets him go.
Yeah.
And that's what bothered me too, is that like after that, like Corey and Mike Myers have this like relationship, like this apprentice Padawan master relationship, and Mike Myers doesn't kill him like at all. Like
Right.
that's stupid.
Yeah.
Like Mike Myers would have just killed him.
But I mean, that sets up the whole Allison falling in love with who she thinks is this kind of like
Yeah.
quiet, shy, hurt pigeon.
She needs to fix him.
Basically. Yeah. And so that they play on that trope. And then obviously the audience figures out that like, no, she can't fall for the bad guy.
Yeah.
And, for
And
the
then
bad
you have the parallels between Laurie and Michael and Allison and
Right.
Corey.
Right.
And then Corey just starts adopting the shape and killing people.
Yeah.
And then he becomes like the new Michael Myers for a bit.
Yeah, because he takes Michael Myers' mask at one point.
Yeah.
He's like, give me your mask.
Yeah.
And like kind of leaves him
Yeah.
maskless. And now
Which
he's
is because Corey kind of like kicks his ass for a little bit. And I'm
Yeah.
like, Michael Myers wouldn't let him like kick his ass. Are you
Right.
kidding me?
right.
He's just like this hurt old man
Yeah.
now. Like,
As all this is happening, I'm thinking like this is it. This is gonna be like the setup for another
it's like
trilogy.
the passing of the torch.
passing of
which
the
is what I
torch.
thought too.
And Laurie's gonna kill the old Michael Myers, and then Cunningham's gonna take. He's gonna get fucked up, but then live.
So in the midst of this transformation of like Corey from this like shy boy who gets bullied by band kids to like the new shape who kills the band kids, spoiler alert, he gets like a motorcycle, and then like it's very, like I was mentioning earlier, it's very Grease too, because he works at like the auto body shop.
Was where his dad
And his
works.
dad's like, hey kid, like here's this bike, like do you want it? Like I figured you should have it. And he like fixes the bike up, and then like he picks up Allison, and they have this weird like montage where they're like riding on the bike, and
and
it
she's
was
like, oh, he's so cool.
it was very Grease too,
Yeah,
like very
yeah.
very Grease too.
So there's a moment where Laurie finds out that Allison's hanging out with this boy, and in the beginning she's very enthusiastic and is like, oh, like, when are you going out? Like, oh, he's so cute.
Like
yada,
she
yada,
kind of
yada.
sets them up.
Right. And then Laurie, and I think she's with Officer Hawkins, they're at a bar, and then they meet the dad of the little boy that Cunningham was babysitting for and accidentally killed. And he's all disheveled, and he tells him a story of how he saw Cunningham walking after his transformation from, shy kid to like the new Michael Myers. And he's like, yeah, his eyes, like the night that like my son got killed, I knew that it wasn't him because he looked very innocent. But when I saw him walking where Michael Myers was hanging out, that his eyes like look pure evil. And that's when like Laurie's like, oh, I need to like break up my granddaughter and this new boy.
Boy.
And this leads into this like showdown, and she finds Cunningham and basically like says like, you got to stay away from my daughter.
And he's like back at the house where the kid died.
Yeah.
He's like sleeping there.
Yeah, he kind of goes back and is like reminiscing or whatever, but he's in his bad state now, so like he doesn't give a shit. And then Laurie's like, stay away from my daughter, and he basically does what the little boy did to him, where he makes it look like Laurie
Stabbed him.
slit his throat,
Killed him.
because he has this line where, and he says it twice, where he's like, if I can't have Allison, that no one. And so he slits his throat right in front of Laurie, and he just like collapses. And then Laurie, in the moment that she goes down to grab the knife, in comes
shows up.
Allison. And she's like, no.
Yeah.
And she's like devastated. Allison's devastated. And then Laurie like claims, what happened. And then that's when like Michael Myers shows up, right?
Corey shows up as Michael Myers because you have this whole
Right.
backtracking a little bit. You have this whole sequence where she's like, where Lori's at the house and she's writing memoirs. It's like a part of this movie is that she's writing her like Laurie Strode memoirs, and there's like this weird narration that doesn't really work. At least I didn't think it worked. I didn't really like that whole bit of just like she's writing her memoirs.
Yeah,
like,
and I feel like that's like a thing that happened in Halloween Kills, where there was like too much like
weird exposition
and like narration
Yeah.
that didn't need to be there because you're seeing the thing that's happening.
Yeah.
So like, why are we needing to hear it again?
Yeah,
you know,
and
if we're
so
already
she's
seeing it?
writing her memoirs and she's at the house alone. She grabs a gun, she grabs like a fifth of whiskey, and she calls 911 and is like, I'd like to report a suicide. And then they're like, okay, and she gives them the address. And as soon as that happens, someone comes in and we see it's Mike Myers, but we know it's not Mike Myers, it's Corey. And he shows up and she kind of like flips the tables and is like, yeah, right, like I'd really commit suicide, and then like shoots him a bunch of times.
That got a little cheer.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. And then, yeah, from there, like he ends up falling down the stairs and she ends up unmasking him and realizing that it's not really Michael Myers, it's just fucking Corey. And that's when he ends up killing himself. And then actual Mike Myers comes. But before that, we do get a few cool scenes of Corey and Mike Myers like working together and like killing people, which I thought was kind of cute. But yeah, once this happens, then we get like the final showdown with Laurie and Mike Myers, which I didn't even think was that good. Like I felt like
No,
all of this lead up was just like
the choreography wasn't that great, and I know they're like old, like being up,
Right.
like human beings or whatever. But here's the thing: so like, Laurie like basically stabs him and like nails him to like this kitchen
Yeah.
counter, and now he's like immobile. And then to really like kill him off, she like shanks him in the side, and like he just starts bleeding everywhere. And I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like, how many times did he get shot in
Yeah.
like Halloween Kills and like by that mob scene? And
Yeah.
like, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, was it Laurie that had to do it? And does she have this like magical force, you know, to kill Michael Myers?
she ends up putting two knives, one knife through each of his hands, you know, and then she stabs him in the side, and he ends up getting free with one hand and ends up like choking her.
Right.
And so she's like about to die. And then
Allison
Allison comes in and like fucks him up.
And then
yeah,
Allison says, like, I'm not going to let the same thing happen to you.
something like that. Yeah.
Everyone's sort of, they're like, okay, now we need to finish the job, basically. And
That was so weird to me.
yeah.
The weird, like, Jesus almost, like, they're just, like, pushing his body. Like, they take him in a parade, first of all,
right.
on the hood of a car.
Yeah.
They just, like, strap him in and they're
And
like,
it's that
oh,
mob
let's
mentality
go.
again, you know, from the second one.
And then they kind of just, like, the whole mob gathers and they kind of, like, carry him up to this, like,
It's where
junkyard metal crusher thing.
Yeah, yeah. Kind of like where you like, it reminded me of those like wood shedders that like where you like put like wood.
Like Fargo.
Yeah, yeah. But this is just like from metal.
Yeah.
And they just throw his body and he gets fucking destroyed.
Yeah.
Like you see his
Like he
brain.
pops.
His like, yeah.
And
his like head crushed.
I kind of
and-
thought it would have been kind of funny if, like, in the last moment, as he's like going in the thing, he would like grab Lori and like take her down with him.
Yeah.
That would have been cool to me.
Yeah.
Like, I wanted Lori to die. Because that felt like the only appropriate ending to me.
Right.
Like, if we're ending it for real, it should have been Lori and Mike Myers both dying.
Well, I thought it was going to be a sacrificial death where like that Lori kills Michael Myers, but she herself gets stabbed or gets so beaten
Yeah.
up that she ends up dying too.
Yeah.
And the only one left is
I thought it was
Her
going to be like a
granddaughter.
weird, like, final jump scare thing where, like, she stabs him and thinks he's dead, and then suddenly he's not, and like he stabs her, or like he like throws her in the fire
Yeah.
with him, or some shit like that.
And speaking of jump scares, these were probably some of the worst jump scares like ever.
They were pretty
And
weak.
Here's the thing. I'm prone to like, I just loud noises in general.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a scary movie, I'd like jump out of my seat. I'm sensitive to that stuff.
Yeah.
And so I don't like jump scares in any movie. And I remember in the first two Halloweens, there were some really good ones where I was like, oh shit.
Yeah.
In this one, it was like nothing. Like
Yeah.
it was like, I kind of knew what was going to happen. And then it wasn't, I don't know, I wasn't jump scared at all. But going back to the ending, yeah. So Michael Myers gets,
Fucked
physically
up.
destroyed. Like that's what I'm saying. How do you come back from that? Unless his like parts reassemble and whatever.
You never know.
And then the end is like back to the memoir thing where like Laurie's like basically the last chapter, the last page of her memoir in her home. And then she walks out and then Officer Hawkins is there and he's like,
It's
oh, I
like,
just
brought you
wanted-
vegetables.
And they had this conversation early in the movie where they talked about going to Tokyo
Yeah, and seeing the cherry
and
blossoms.
seeing the cherry blossoms. And so I think the last line is like her saying, so tell me about the cherry blossoms.
Yeah, and he like comes up and sits next to her. And then it was
And
kinda-
in the end, and then it just cuts and then it's like Halloween ends and that's it.
yeah.
That was the end of the movie. Okay, going back to Cunningham, like, I mean, he could still come back.
I
even
kinda
though
hope
his,
he
like,
does, 'cause
neck was slit.
Otherwise, it seems like a waste of a character. Like you spent all this time like going through his story and being like, okay, now he's evil now and he's being trained by Michael Myers, and just for him to like die, it would seem like a waste of a movie. First of all, because you spent all this time with him and instead you could have spent time with Laurie and Mike Myers and Allison.
Right.
So I'm kind of hoping we get at least one more movie with him or something, because he did a really good job. Like,
yeah, he was good.
playing the little tortured
I
boy.
don't recognize him being in,
He looks so familiar to
in
me.
anything else.
And I've looked at his IMDb, and the only thing that I saw that I feel like I would recognize him in is he was in an episode of Supernatural. One
course.
episode. But I'm like really good at like, especially Supernatural people. So I'm thinking that's what it is. But he just looks so familiar that I know I've seen him in something before.
The other theory that I had is that maybe Allison is so traumatized because literally Michael Myers killed her dad, killed her mom.
Secondhand killed her boyfriend.
Yeah, secondhand killed her boyfriend. Her grandmother is mentally just still traumatized and getting over it. And that's somehow they spin it to where she like gets revenge, and rather than going the positive route in life, because she's like a nurse, in this movie, that she somehow becomes killer nurse or something like that.
Angel of Death.
Yeah, some shit like that. As far as the trilogy goes, by far the weakest one to me. I thought it was weaker than Halloween Kills, and only because like Halloween Kills, at least there's a lot of killing.
Yeah, and it's very.
And you're bringing back older
It
characters
has
too.
all the equations of like a slasher, a
Yeah.
basic slasher movie.
And you're playing with time too, because you're going back to the 78 version, because there's like those flashback sequences where like they could have killed Michael Myers,
Mhm.
Officer Hawkins when he had a chance, but he didn't, and all that. And to me, this is supposed to be the apex, like the climax, and go out, if this is going to be the last one, go
Yeah.
out on like, just like, hitting 1,000, but it's just like,
Also, I will
A swing and a
say
miss.
they incorporated an element which is very much pandering to me in this movie with the weird like radio interludes where it's like you're
Oh,
listening to
yeah.
blah 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 Haddonfields blah blah blah,
I like
and then like a
that.
song play, and I was like, oh, that's so rad. I really like that portion of it. And then even when they show up to the actual radio station and like the DJ gets killed, like that was a really cool sequence to me.
yeah.
But it felt out of place.
Yeah, because that's how the whole movie starts.
Yeah.
Like when they do the Universal logo,
Yeah, it's
you
like
hear
a radio.
the radio station. And I thought it was going to play a bigger part.
Yeah.
But ultimately it's just kind of like, it's kind of just,
It's like
in
a setup
the
for another
universe.
kill.
yeah, right. And,
Yeah.
and when the DJ gets killed and all that. But I thought it was going to like be part of like, oh, that Laurie hears something through the radio, or there's like an alert, or like, or maybe the climax happens at the radio
Yeah.
station, because there's a part where Cunningham and Allison are like on a date and they go up to the antennas. He's like,
Yeah.
oh, these antennas remind me of like,
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly what it said, but and then it was like that was the connection to like him killing the
Yeah.
DJ. So what do you think of it as like a trilogy?
I think it's really disjointed. Like I don't think it works as a trilogy, because when you look at the 2018 version, it kind of sets like a very serious tone. Like it's very
Yes.
serious, it's very dark, which is what I would have liked for them to continue with, is that kind of tone,
Right.
because I thought it really worked, especially for like Michael Myers for the new age.
That's
know?
why I liked it.
And then you get like Halloween Kills, which is more like an 80s slasher movie. And then you get the weird mob mentality and like the weird Evil Dies Tonight. Speaking of, did you see there's a shot where there's like someone, I don't know if it's Corey, riding his bike through like the town. And there's a graffiti in like a basin that says "Love lives today." Did you see that?
Which, by the way, is in Halloween Kills.
Is it?
When they're at the bar with Anthony Michael Hall, there's like a fundraiser. Like, you know how like you put change in like for like certain health studies or whatever?
Yeah.
There's that. And I had never noticed that. So that's the little Easter egg. But yeah, I did notice that.
And then with Halloween, like I said, if Halloween Ends would have been Halloween Kills, and then we got another movie in the same tone as the first movie, I think it would have worked. But because we got this weird, like serious and then kind of campy and slasher, and then this one's like a little serious, but a little like Grease 2, like it didn't really work for me.
Maybe that was the idea that they had for the second one, and they like pushed it to the third
Maybe.
one. You know, because it does feel like a middle chapter in like of a story like that.
And I think it'd be a lot more successful if it was a middle chapter, because you'd have that like transitional movie to whatever the third movie.
And it gives you like a cliffhanger. Like it gives you like, I can't wait to see the next one, where like with Halloween Ends, it's like, wow, Michael Myers is like just hiding in a sewer. That's where he's been for like a year.
That's what he's been doing.
Like,
and then also like, what is the span of time? And that's another thing that bugged me. The span of time between when Allison and Corey meet versus like, you know, when Laurie's telling them not to date. Because she falls like real in love with this man, like
and
really
even though,
fast.
like he's like possibly committed,
like even when they first like
murder.
go on their date, she's just like, oh my God. Like, and I'm just like, how much time is passing that you're just like, would die for this man? Like you've met him for like a week. Like you've only known him for a week. That was another part where I was just like, this is weird.
I just thought that whole idea too of that she was so empathetic to someone that like with her past of her family of murder,
right?
To just be like, you know, oh, I feel bad for this kid that may or may have not killed this kid, because at that point, like she doesn't have any inside information. She just like based it off like what she probably saw, like, you know, in the news or whatever. Before we wrap up our review of Halloween Ends, I just wanted to go over the budget, because I find it a little bit interesting, because you told me before we started recording that David Gordon Green is going to do a new Exorcist trilogy, right?
Right.
And I figured, I was like, well, how successful financially, because obviously it's made by Universal, a big studio, and all they really care about is making money, as much money as possible. The budget to the original, the 2018 Halloween was $10 million. The US had made $160 million, and worldwide it made $255 million. So the budget wasn't very big on the first one. So it made a decent profit. And then you add maybe another 10 to 20, 30 million for marketing. It still made its money back. And then with Halloween Kills, they doubled the budget. So it was 20 million. And North America made 92 million, which is, you know, considerably less than the first one. And worldwide, it made 131 million. And that's usually the narrative with sequels, is that you get diminishing returns with the more and more you release stuff. So it begs the question, is The Exorcist Universal property?
They had it at Horror Nights. So yeah, it's got to be. I thought it was Warner Brothers.
That's what I thought.
Because I remember the trailer when they re-released it, and it was the WB, and it was black and white.
So it looks like it was Warner Bros., but maybe there was like a swap of hands or something like that. But yeah, that's going to be interesting, because now there's like 3 more movies of an old franchise that they're going to reboot or do whatever.
If he does it like 2018 Halloween, then I'll be happy.
So what are your final thoughts with Halloween Ends in this iteration of Halloween in general?
I mean, I think people are going to watch it. Doesn't matter. People love horror movies, and it's definitely going to be divisive. I'm curious to see the discourse of like real hardcore Michael Myers fans. Like, I'm curious to see what they're going to say. If I'm wrong, then I'm going to be surprised. But I feel like they're going to be like, oh, Michael Myers wouldn't do that. Like, he wouldn't have some like kid be his like second. He would just kill the kid. Like, which is what I was thinking. I'm not even like a Michael Myers purist or anything. Like, I like Halloween, but it's not like one of my favorites. So I'm just curious to see what people are going to say. And there's probably, well, it's 12:30. There should be some first reactions on Twitter already. As a whole, I don't think it worked. I think they work fine as separate movies.
Even though they have the same characters, they're very different the way they even like begin. Like,
Yeah.
you know, and especially this last one where it starts off with like a setup of like, I mean, like I said, if that was the original idea of like that they were going to go with a new Michael Myers, I could see the setup, but then it doesn't follow through and then he ends up dying anyway. So,
Yeah.
you know, why start off that way? I love the first one. The second one was not that great. And then the third one was not even that great either. And so, and I think overall, like the response has been kind of that way. I mean, I'm sure the diehards are going to love it regardless. But I feel like even some diehards after Halloween Kills weren't really that enthused about it. But yeah, it's very kind of wonky. It doesn't gel between the three movies. It doesn't know what it wants to be, in my opinion. Like we talked about how the original one is kind of more based in reality.
Yeah.
And I was
I
genuinely,
think that's what makes it scarier.
yeah. And that's what frightens me,
Yeah.
that it's like could potentially happen in reality. But then like the second one is more slasher and more borderline supernatural, and it's very kind of bipolar in that way of like, what is it trying to be? Is it going to be, you can't do both, you know?
Yeah.
Especially with that exposition that we talked about. And then this last one is like, okay, is it going to continue on? Like, is that what it would take to kill Michael Myers finally? You know, is it Laurie like doing what she did and then grinding him up and all that? But yeah, it's just very, and then it's supposed to undo all the sequels, right?
Yeah. So it goes directly from 78 to 18.
Yeah. Because there's a lot of even dialogue where they like talk shit on like, they're like, oh yeah, just ignore that. Or
Yeah.
like, you know.
Like, didn't they mention in like the 2018 one how like Laurie was his sister or something like that?
Yeah,
And she just goes, "Meh," or like something like that.
Yeah, it's like, or just ignore that, or
Yeah,
like, you got
yeah.
the story wrong.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, it's fun, you know, if you're ignored some of the things that we say. It's like it's a Halloween movie. It's can be scary at times.
Yeah, and that was the thing too, where I was like, yeah, it's fun, but I want to see like Michael Myers killing people. I don't want to see like this dude dressed as Michael Myers killing people. Like people want to see Michael Myers killing people.
Exactly.
And I think that's kind of where it fell flat for me, is I was just like, well, we're not getting much of Michael Myers, even though this is the last.
Yeah, especially
movie.
this is his send off.
Yeah.
You know, I would just fill it with just Michael Myers killing
Just
people.
like killing everyone,
you know,
yeah.
And then this ultimate battle with him and Laurie, and then that's it.
Yeah.
You know. But anyways, so that's our Halloween Ends review. We hope you enjoyed it. And again, if you're watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. Comment, even if you completely disagree with us, which if I remember for the Halloween Kills, there were a few comments that people weren't too thrilled with our take on it. But again, any engagement helps. You can find us on Twitter and on Instagram at CutMoviePod, where we show updates. We posted our experience at Beyond Fest this year, and we'll put teasers about our upcoming podcasts. And like I said, coming up, it's going to be another Beyond Fest screening that we had for a movie that's going to come out in November. If you want to check out more spooky reviews and commentaries and deep dives, we've done deep dives on Blair Witch Project. We've done a commentary on Malignant. We did a review again of Halloween Kills. And there's a bunch more podcasts that we put up. So we highly encourage you guys to listen to those. Again, thank you very much for listening. Cut. That's a wrap.